Welcome to the Future of Teamwork podcast, where we explore cutting-edge strategies to keep teams human-centered, drive innovation, and empower you with the tools and insights needed to help your team excel and thrive in today's rapidly changing world. Your host is Dane Grunewald, a seasoned expert with over 20 years of experience enhancing team dynamics and innovation. Today, Dane is joined by David Cory, a leadership development coach, trainer, and speaker known for his expertise in applying the concept of emotional intelligence to individual and organizational performance improvement. In today's episode, you'll gain insights on, first, David's evolution. Follow David's transformation from teaching outdoor skills to becoming a leader in emotional intelligence. Second, emotional intelligence in leadership. Discover how emotional intelligence enhances leadership through improved self-awareness and decision-making. Finally, building high-performing teams. Learn how emotional intelligence fosters high-performing teams and cultivates a positive organizational culture, critical for sustained success. So, teamwork makes the dream work, and we're here to inspire your next collaborative breakthrough. Gather your team or put on your headphones, and let's dive in together.
Welcome to the Future of Teamwork podcast. My name's Dane Grunewald, CEO of the Huddle 3 Group, and today I'm joined from Canada by David Cory. David is the president and CEO of the Emotional Intelligence Training Company, and we've been having a good conversation here pre-show about how he came to be doing this great work. So welcome, David. It's going to be fun.
Thank you so much, Dane. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So for the benefit of our listeners, perhaps you can provide a bit of a background story on how you came to be doing this work.
Sure, yeah. So ever since I was a little kid, I loved teaching people things. So I worked at a summer camp and taught outdoor skills. And all through high school, I taught guitar. You can see the guitars on my wall in my background. Taught guitar all through high school, and I loved downhill skiing, and I taught skiing in the Canadian Rockies and then over in the European Alps. It was only natural that I went into education. However, I thought it was so strange that we weren't using what we knew about educating children in our school system. So I thought, wow, this would be, if I spent my career here, this would be like pushing a river upstream. I thought, where else can I use my skills? And I saw the workplace as a great fit. How can I teach people what they need to know to be up and running, doing whatever kind of job in the quickest, most efficient way possible? And I discovered training, which is different than education, as you know, because we're zeroing in on skills and competencies, and then we're trying to get people to, we're trying to break them down into learnable chunks, and then we're trying to get people to emulate those. And so if you get into training long enough, you gravitate towards leadership development, seeing that of course it's much easier to focus on teaching people, how to steer a ship versus everyone running over to one side and paddling. And so it was about leadership for me. And I was teaching leadership courses for a post-secondary institution, and I noticed something very interesting, that we assume that managers have a basic level of personal and interpersonal skills. And we were teaching them complex skills like conflict resolution. Well, in order to resolve conflict, even following the steps that we could give you, you have to be good with people. And I noticed that some people were not. And I didn't know how to make sense of that difference until I learned about the concept of emotional intelligence. And that was, when the fireworks went off, and I realized this is what I wanted to focus on.
That's neat. And you were at the front of this movement. So emotional intelligence, we're all reasonably familiar with now. It doesn't mean we're all good at it. But you've been doing this now for what, 26 years? 26 years?
Yep. Yeah, 26 years.
That's neat.
Yes.
So in those early days, what did it look like to be coming into teams and saying, let's start with the basic interpersonal skills of your leadership?
Well, when I first became interested in the topic, I started shouting emotional intelligence from the mountaintops, and nobody was listening.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I'm pretty good at selling leadership courses, because that was one of my jobs at the post-secondary institution. And I thought, well, I'm going to sell leadership development, and then I'm going to sneak in emotional intelligence.
Got it.
And I started becoming very successful at it. At the same time, we set up our company called called it the Emotional Intelligence Training Company. That was my wife's idea. I was trying to think of some made-up name, and my wife said, just call it what you're trying to create.
Yeah.
And little did we know that managers were going to learn about emotional intelligence all over the world at a conference, in an MBA program. They were going to come back to their office and type in 3 of the words of our company name.
Brilliant.
Emotional intelligence training. So I say to anybody, if you're starting a company, name your company what people are going to type into Google to find you. So that was sheer luck. The calls started coming in from all over the world, and they never stopped, Dane.
That's brilliant. So you've been doing a range of industries, leaders, geographies, you name it.
Every industry sector you can think of, and some that you may not even know that existed. Governments at all levels, from little villages right up to the national governments of other countries.
Fantastic.
We've done it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when you think about, and before the show, you and I were talking about individual effectiveness leading to organizational effectiveness.
Yes.
So when you think about creating that traction and that movement for teams, what is it that really sets apart a good starting point from, a lot of people are spending time and money on learning, but where do you find that leader or that leadership team that are really committed to doing good work with your group?
Yeah, it's a great question, Dane. And frankly, we often preach to the converted. So we're often working with high performance teams that want to be even higher performing teams. The ones that are dysfunctional, the ones where there's no trust, they don't reach out. They're not the ones who are looking to be better, that are looking to improve. They don't know what they don't know, unfortunately, and so again, we frequently are preaching to the choir, so to speak. These are people who are already pretty aware, and they want to get even better.
Yeah, that's neat. So it's really going from the good to great.
Yeah.
And when you do engage, how broad is it? Are you working with an executive team, or are you starting to go through all teams in an organization?
It completely varies, and there's one exception to the answer that I just gave you. I just thought of, and that is the team or the human resources department that contacts us and says, "Listen, we've got this executive, this senior person. We can't afford to lose them because of their technical expertise that we want to keep, but they rub people the wrong way. People are leaving their department. They're a bit abrasive. Will you work with them? In which case, my question always is, are they open to coaching? If they're open to coaching, we're happy to work with them. And we've seen some dramatic turnarounds because people lack self-awareness. As you know, Dane, we're not a feedback culture. In fact, let me change that. We love feedback as long as it's positive. When it's critical or constructive, we don't want to hear it, and so nobody wants to give it. And so companies don't have the conversations that they need to have in order to inform these people. When I go in and when I say to the HR professional, so this executive, they know all about what's going on here. Oh yeah, we've told them. Yeah, we sat down. So then we have a meeting. We're sitting around a boardroom table, or we're on a virtual call, and this person seems like they're completely caught off guard. I didn't know any of this was happening. What do you mean you're concerned about my performance? Because people don't have the kind of conversations they need to have. And you can read a book like Crucial Conversations or Crucial Confrontations or many of the wonderful conversation books out there. But unless you go a little bit deeper to this foundation of human effectiveness skills that we talk about, the other things are easy to say and hard to do.
Yeah, I believe it. And I've had that experience. I was talking to a coach recently, and he shared with me that going on a journey of personal growth is hard because you're personally going to resist it, but so are your team members going to resist it. And something makes me think that that's related to this theme that people don't like to give tough feedback.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And people don't like to change. There's
People do
another
not like
thing,
to
Dane.
change. Yeah.
Yeah. We just did this wonderful workshop with a group of managers last week, and I was looking at the evaluations, and people raved about it and loved it and said, do we really need to go that deep and be that vulnerable?
Yeah.
And the answer is yes, if you want to have the kind of relationships of trust that develops loyalty and commitment, then yes, you've got to be vulnerable. You've got to learn about yourself, and then you've got to reveal yourself to others and be willing to be seen. And
Yeah.
people don't like it. They're not used to it. That's not the way our culture operates.
No, that's exactly right. And it's, to me, if you think about those teams when you go in and people don't want to do the work, everyone's thinking about the discomfort, but no one's thinking about the pain that we put ourselves through day to day in those known practices. So it's almost like we just can't see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, we tolerate so much, Dane,
Yeah.
right? We tolerate, unmanaged conflict. We tolerate other people crossing boundaries for us. We tolerate other people stepping on our values because we don't like the risk of being vulnerable and saying that's not acceptable to me.
Yeah.
Or you hurt me when you did what you did. We just don't know how to say that because we're not educating little kids to do that. And here we are, a bunch of adults trying to figure this out in a remedial way. Well, it's much harder to remediate than it is to learn it properly the first time. And my prediction is in the future, little kids will be learning the skills that we are currently teaching to executives and managers in the workplace.
I like that. That's a brilliant outlook and provocation, because that way everyone's learning what good looks like rather than just kind of turning out in the
Absolutely.
workforce and surviving.
Yeah, and I ask audiences, do you think that we could change, even move the dial a little bit on the divorce rate if we taught people about how to have an effective relationship when they
Yep.
were young?
Yep.
How to fix a dysfunctional relationship, how to deepen a relationship? We absolutely could, but we don't.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's dive into a little bit more of your methodology and framework, because I'm hearing lots around trust and building relationships in order to fuel what teams are capable of doing. That
Yes.
excites me.
Yes. Yeah. So how I learned about the concept of emotional intelligence was there was a guy who was on a cross-country tour, speaking at every conference he could speak at, about the world's first scientific approach to the measurement of emotional intelligence. And I thought, what is this? I have to go hear this guy. And what I heard was him talking about a foundational set of human effectiveness skills that are all emotional skills that are the foundation of everything we do. I was one of those annoying participants that hung around after everybody had left. I pestered him with questions. I followed him down the hallway to the front of the hotel. I ended up driving him to the airport, talking about how we were going to work together. And we've been strategic partners of the publishing company, which is the largest publisher of psychometrics in Canada. They're called MHS, and we've been their training partner. And it was my idea to form this relationship and have us as an approved training partner of theirs. They're test publishers, we're trainers, so it was a beautiful partnership.
That's teamwork right there. I love that.
Yeah, so we've been teaching the certification course to certify human resource professionals, coaches, and then it's so interesting who comes to the course. We've got physicians, we've got U.S. Air Force, we've got every branch of the military of both of our countries, and I like to say that the military is one of our biggest clients right now because they know they need to change their culture. And if you're talking about culture change, if you're even thinking about culture change, you've got to resource your people. You've got to teach your people to have difficult conversations. You've got to realize that culture only changes with every interaction that someone has. And if people have a choice in every interaction, do I maintain the status quo of how things go around here, or do I nudge this organization into the future? And help them evolve? Do we intentionally evolve this culture? And you can only do that when you got the skills. And those skills, interestingly, are all emotional. It's how you feel about yourself. It's whether you're in touch and in tune with your own emotions. It's whether you express those to others. It's whether you can be seen. It's whether you understand what a relationship is and that it only happens beneath the surface. We only relate to each other as humans, not as workers, not as architects or lawyers or our actuaries. That's not how we relate to each other. We relate to each other as humans. So how do we intentionally go beneath the surface and connect at people, beneath their surface? That requires vulnerability. And I love when Brene Brown says this in one of her TED Talks. And in fact, the very first one that made her famous, she says, you know how I feel about vulnerability? I hate vulnerability. And everybody does. It's opening oneself up to harm. That's the literal definition of vulnerability. Nobody wants to do that. It's scary. It's dangerous. But there is a risk-reward equation here. And without the risk, you don't get the reward of that relationship of trust, loyalty, and commitment.
That's neat. And you've hit so many good points there. I was scrambling to write them all down. I love the way that you describe resourcing your people, because it's not an organizational or a systems thing. It's really starting with the human. And then you went on to, hey, let's invite your team members to nudge you into the future.
Yes.
And that physical, tangible nudge is very telling. It sounds like you've chosen that word intentionally.
I have, and Dane, this happened to me just yesterday. I talk about this all the time, and so sometimes it doesn't happen for a month or so. But it happened to me yesterday. I'm in buying some blueberries at the local farm stand, and this young woman from behind the cashier says, "So, do you have any plans for the rest of the day?" And they've been trained to say it. And it's a bit of a weird question. It's like, it takes you back the first time you hear it. It's like, wait a minute, you're a stranger. Why would I be telling you my plans for the rest of the day? But what they're doing is they are engaging at a human level. They are trying to relate. They're building relationships with the question. Now, it doesn't have to be that question. It could be another question. But managers tell me, I don't have time to do this. I'm busy. Do you realize the demand and the pressure that we face? And I say, listen, the way that you have to see this is, what is the ROI of you taking less than 30 seconds to say, I remember your kid had a hockey tournament. How did that go? I mean, did you go? Was it fun? That's the human relationship. That's the human element. And we do this exercise in workshops all over the world, Dane, where we ask people to tell us about the best leader they ever had. And almost without exception, people talk about the way they were treated, not that they had the best credentials or that they were the best technician or that they were the smartest. Nobody ever said my best leader had the highest IQ. That never happens. It's all about how you were treated by that person, whether they saw you as a human being versus a worker, whether they seemed to care about you and your family and know about you personally, etc. That's what people tell us.
I love that. I spoke to a good friend yesterday, actually, and he's just taken a new job, and he'd been in his current job for a long time, so it was a big change. When he was there on interview, he did a site walk, and he walked down and he bumped into a couple of people he knew in the community, and he goes, "Tell me about what it's like to work here." And true to your word, he said, we've got the best boss ever. He goes, "I don't even think my boss, the top boss, knows my name, but everyone here is treated so well." And he said that's what made the decision for him. He was on the fence. It's a big life change. And he said just hearing that some of these workers, way down in the organization in the field, were committed because they felt they were treated as humans.
Absolutely, Dan. And we talk about recruiting and onboarding, and onboarding begins on Glassdoor, where people go and they see what's it like to work for this company, what's their reputation, how are they viewed, what's the culture like. So to your point, unless we help managers to know and understand that how they treat their employees leads to the creation of that culture that employees are attracted to. This is attraction. One of the big things that makes organizations effective. Are they able to attract top talent?
Yes. Yeah, that's not going to be going away anytime soon either. No matter how quickly the AI comes on, everyone's going to need great humans on their teams.
Yeah, and I was asked to do a presentation on leading with emotional intelligence in the age of AI.
Yes.
This conference, Dane, was in the Maldives.
Great spot. I love the Maldives.
We were just there a month ago. My wife was asked to talk about increasing the numbers of women leaders in organizations globally. That's her specialty area in the area of emotional intelligence. And so I went to take a look and see, what can I say about AI? I'm not an AI specialist. And when I started looking at AI, of course, I use ChatGPT to help me with this.
Yeah.
One of the things that I realized that was a glaring highlight of my investigation was the limitation of AI is no emotion.
Mm-hmm.
That's what separates us.
Yeah.
So these brains of ours, they're limited in terms of the amount of information we can store and search for and analyze data we can analyze. But we got a huge edge over AI, and that's emotion.
Yeah. And actually, that could be perceived as one of the gains of bringing AI in. And we've had this conversation with a few different people recently that if AI comes in and does a lot of the knowledge work that we're asking humans to do, humans can do more of the emotional work.
Absolutely, but they got to have the skills, Dane.
Yeah.
And again, we need some great models of skills and competencies, and we use that one that is the foundation for the world's first scientific assessment for emotional intelligence. And that's the one we use. It's brilliant, it's comprehensive, it arose out of empirical research. Several of the leading models of emotional intelligence did not come from empirical research, and so they're missing. They have gaps. There's big spaces in those models, unfortunately.
So tell me more about that framework. What are the skills?
Yeah. So the fellow who created the framework, his name is Dr. Reuven Bar-On. I first met him in 1999 at the world's first international conference on emotional intelligence in Chicago, where I met all the pioneers, all the big names. Daniel Goleman was there, Jack Mayer was there. I met Peter Salovey later; he wasn't there. Then there was Reuven Bar-On as well, and there was Josh Friedman, who I just met with yesterday, we both got involved right around the same time. Yeah. Different models. We use different models, but it doesn't really matter which model you use as long as you're helping people to be more intelligent about emotions. That is what it is all about. But in any case, our model has 5 categories of skills. And the first one is self-perception. And self-perception begins when we're babes in arms. It's how we're treated, whether we get the feeling that we're loved and that we belong, that we fit in, that we're worthy and deserving, or not. And so those early life experiences are critical. And then it's every message that was sent to us and whether we believe them or not. If we look to pop culture and the media, and you can see the people who have fashioned their lives influenced by pop culture and the media. We all are. It's called conformity bias, and it's one of the aspects of how emotion works with logic. We try to conform, we try to fit in, we want to fit in. We choose the glasses that we buy, or the way that we do our hair, or whether we have a beard or not, or the clothing that we choose, the things that we hang on our wall. We want to fit in and we want to stand out all at the same time. We want to make our individual mark. So self-perception is critical and important, and it's about knowing oneself. And know thyself, as you may know, Dane, is a very good suggestion for living.
Yes.
Apparently, it's inscribed. I've never been there, but it's inscribed over the temple door at the Temple of Apollo at Delphi. And I can't confirm that for sure. Something I read, but I think it's cool that in in ancient Greece they knew about. In fact, there's another quotation from Aristotle who said, to be angry is easy, but to be angry with the right person in the right way at the right time for the right reason, that's hard. So he was talking about emotional intelligence back in 600 BC or whenever he was around. And so self-perception is critical and important. Then self-expression, finding your voice, like you found with your podcast, finding your voice and using it, expressing yourself to the world, talking about what you care about, what you're most passionate about. That's critical and important. Now, we need to hear from everybody. Every voice is important. I can't believe that some companies allow their employees to have their cameras off on a virtual call. It should never be allowed. You'd never allow people to sit around a boardroom table and bury their faces in their laptops or their phones while the meeting was going on. That is simply not acceptable. Not only do you need your cameras turned on, you need to hear from everyone. You do a check-in. You go around to every single person. How are you doing today on a scale from 1 to 10? What's going on for you? And we're checking in, we're connecting on a human level before we even begin talking about the business that's at hand. And then we need to understand relationships. How do they happen? How do you build that all-important base of Patrick Lencioni's pyramid, which is trust? How do we understand so little about trust. We break trust all the time, even though it takes so long to build up, so many little steps, and then we break it in one decision. And companies do this all the time. They ask employees for feedback, and then they never tell them what they do with the feedback. Breaking trust. They never circle back and say, thank you so much for giving us your feedback. And so relationships. And then there's this whole area of decision-making and problem-solving. We do not consider emotions to be part of logic. And there's an inherent problem with that because it's how our brains work. You've heard of Howard Gardner and his multiple intelligences. And there may be multiple intelligence, but really, there's just one intelligence, and it happens to be emotional. That's the way our brains work. We don't do anything without emotions. Emotions are never not present. They're there trying to give us feedback on our environment, helping us to navigate more efficiently and effectively. And if we don't think they're important, and this is how gender becomes a factor in your EQ.
Interesting.
Our EQ is based on what we believe to be true. And if we don't believe emotions are important, if we believe we have to, suck it up, buttercup, big boys don't cry, we got to be tough and manual and manly in order to be a real man in today's society, then we can't express our emotions because that's a sign of weakness in that paradigm. So we have to shift paradigms. We have to challenge traditional beliefs about what it means to be male, what it means to be female. We have to challenge country cultures. We have to challenge religious beliefs, Dane, that are oppressive to people. We have to say, hey, I get where this came from. It came from the culture at the time.
Yeah.
But we have to evolve. And we can treat people better rather than hate them because they're different, which, as you know, some systems of belief, that's what the way it is.
Yeah.
And we have to challenge those and say, no, we're going to keep the parts of the belief that serve us, and we're going to challenge and change and modify and edit the parts of our belief system that don't serve us any longer. And that's the way we have to be moving forward if this world is going to have any chance of survival. Because we've got people who are resorting to violence. Violence, as you know, Dane, is at the extreme end of the spectrum of symptoms of a lack of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Right? Imagine, as smart as we are, we've found no other way to communicate with another person except to use force.
Yeah.
That's a sad, sad state of affairs, and really talks about the ignorance and the stupidity of people who use violence.
Yeah, it does. It does. That's a cool framework. So just to replay what I heard self-perception, self-expression, then relationships, and then that last one was the decision-making and problem-solving.
There's one more, Dane,
Okay.
and I love old sayings, and I use this old saying to introduce it. And the ship was never meant to stay in the harbor. We need to get up off our couch, go out into the world to make our way. And that's stressful. It's going to be storms. There's going to be waves. There's going to be all kinds of hammering. And so the fifth and final area, Dane, is stress management.
Oh, I love that.
What are the skills? What are the emotional tools that we need to manage daily demands and pressures? That's all in stress management.
Yeah.
And so there's 3 subscales or EQ competencies, more discrete skills in each of these 5 areas.
Oh, so there's 15 in total.
There's 15 in total, and we get this extremely comprehensive picture of how someone operates based on their responses to 133 statements, 133 psychometric items, and then we can focus our development efforts.
That's neat. So there's a couple I'd like to dive into. So self-perception and knowing thyself.
Yes, absolutely.
I've been working with my coach recently, and that's a lot of what we're spending our time on. And it is remarkably energizing when you're like, well, this is how I show up.
Yes.
I'm not going to try and conform to be how other people expect me to be. I'm going to be not unapologetic in being me because I need to be considerate of others, but I'm going to tell people who I am, and this is how I like to show up, and then I'm going to ask for their feedback.
Absolutely. Yes. So you're bringing 2 parts of the model into play. One is the knowing and understanding of the self. There, as I mentioned, there are 3 skills in self-perception. The first one is self-regard, because it is so determinant of our lives.
Yeah.
How we regard ourselves, whether we, again, regard ourselves as worthy and deserving or not, determines a lot about what we do in this world. And the second area is self-actualization. How do you feel about what you do? Does it bring fulfillment? Is it energizing? Is it your area of passion? Is it where you can reach your full potential? Abraham Maslow said, if you don't do what you're capable of doing in this life, you'll probably be unhappy.
Yeah.
And so imagine that, how much potential it lies within us that we are not using. So it's when we reach for that potential that we see self-actualization. And then the final one is emotional self-awareness. Are you in touch and in tune with your own emotions? And that's all the area of self-perception. And then you touched on the other area, which is empathy, which is how we know what our impact is on other people. Are we impacting people the way we intend to impact them? And we often don't connect intention with impact, as you know, right?
Yep.
I don't think that managers intend to humiliate, embarrass, and demotivate employees when they raise their voices, but they do.
Yeah.
And why do people raise their voices? Because they haven't learned more effective ways to give feedback or sort of help people to work the way that they want them to work in order to get to reach a deadline or something like that. But they're grasping at straws instead of being taught how to engage in relationships so that you've got the emotional bank account to be able to ask someone to stay late or stay over the weekend or whatever. But you can't do that without investing in that emotional bank account first. They're not going to do it. And yelling at them, well, again, it has the opposite of your intention. Your intention might be to make them work harder. The impact is they're embarrassed, they're demotivated, and they're going to get back at you somehow. Right? They're gonna when people feel powerless, they take back their power in strange ways. They start coming in late, leave early. They steal office supplies. They sabotage reports and data. All these things because they feel powerless.
Yeah, and I've also heard. I was talking to a friend, Andre Martin, who talks a lot about wrong fit, right fit in teams, and he's like, when a team member doesn't feel like they belong or they're appreciated, even if it's not malicious like sabotage or stealing office supplies, their creative energy, their discretionary effort just slips out the door.
Absolutely.
And that's so important for teams. So,
absolutely, Dane. And when people feel like their safety is threatened, then they stop giving of their full discretionary effort.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And managers need to understand this. They need to be watching out for it. And again, they need the skills in some cases to watch out for it, one of which is empathy.
Yeah. It would be cool if you could see some kind of floating energy bar that was just like beside every employee, and you could say like, this is the energy they're bringing to work today. I probably need to do that check in or circle back conversation.
Absolutely. I don't know if you're familiar with the study, but Aubrey Daniels did this in I think the 70s, where he determined that there was a level of effort below which employees would be terminated, and it turned out to be 30%. So pretty low.
Very low.
So yeah, everything above 30 is discretionary.
That's crazy. That's a big range.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's very
So,
cool.
so yes, there's lots of factors in discretionary effort, but one of the biggest and most identifiable is how they're treated by their manager.
Yeah. So we're talking a lot through that framework about resourcing your people with these skills and knowing how to manage themselves. And you talked about the individual effectiveness to the organizational effectiveness, but I still put team in the middle because I
Yes.
think you've got the individual, the team, and then the
Yes.
organization.
Yes.
And what I heard you say when we were talking about relationships is maybe challenging beliefs. Um, is that true? Like in your example, it was challenging beliefs of a religion for something that may have been written in, a history gone by. Is it true of sort of norms in a team and behaviors in a team? Do you have to try and coach those individuals to be challenging those norms and behaviors that may be holding everyone stuck where they are?
Yeah, absolutely, Dane. In fact, our approach to team development is as a byproduct of getting people to really, we build up the safety over the course of a workshop, and then we challenge people to be vulnerable and to be real. And we talk about the idea that everybody wants more realness in this world, and not more fake. There's too much fake. We all know fake when we see it, and we don't want it. We're not looking for it. We want what's real, and people don't necessarily understand that how they feel is their truth. I have to remind people that it's not the truth, it's just your
Their
truth.
truth.
But when people start sharing their truths, when they find their voice, and they find their voice in emotional expression, and they practice sharing their truth in emotional expression, that leads to relationship and deeper connection with others. And so people come away from a workshop of ours and say, I gave you some of that feedback. I didn't know we were going to do this, and if you told me we were going to do these things, I probably wouldn't have come. But I'm so glad I did. It was so worthwhile. There's this huge level of trust and connection among us now that was never there before. And yeah, you can do some of the traditional team developments work, and we've done it both experientially. When I was young, I worked at an outward bound school for young offenders. So we
Yeah.
did all the outward bound things, which is all the experiential trust building, challenging, pushing to the edge, and that sort of thing. So I've done all of that. So I bring a little bit of that into the training room, and we do that with people, challenging them to and saying and not letting them get away with not being involved or not participating, and say, yeah, this is hard. It's hard for everyone.
Yeah.
Because we're not used to it. We don't do it on a regular basis. And this is the place to practice. This is like the driving range. Better to start at a driving range than start, out on a fancy golf course where you're paying a lot of money to practice your swing. That doesn't make sense. So we practice in the training room, and we encourage people. And we're all coaches. We're all I'm a PCC. All of our people are ICF certified coaches. And we zero in on what people need to work on most, and we coach them around how to practice. We encourage people to practice with their families. Sometimes
Yeah.
the families are a great place to practice. Those people love you, and they care about you and support you and your growth and development, and so they will appreciate hearing more about who you are, because my guess is you're probably, like the rest of us, not thinking that anyone really cares, or not wanting to burden people. We hear this all the time. Why aren't
Yeah.
you more expressive with others? I don't want to burden them. Okay, so if we went to them and asked them if it would burden them if you shared something important with them, do you think that they would say that they would feel burdened? No. They would appreciate it.
Yeah, it's almost more of a burden not knowing what's going on in your team
Yes.
members' lives.
It is hallowed ground, being led into what is important and critical, and what's top of mind, and the way that people are feeling, and their hopes and dreams, their fears and worries. That's hallowed ground, and we
Yeah.
need to get used to. As one of my colleagues says, a member of our team, he says we need to get more comfortable with being uncomfortable, because we have such a hard time with it.
Yeah.
But that's what's real. Life is uncomfortable if you think about all the messy parts of being human. I have another colleague who says it's hard to human.
Yeah, it is hard to human.
Again, we just have to create spaces, and this is what we do: create spaces, use models, and create activities and exercises, highly interactive, to allow people to practice, to dip their toe into vulnerability, to talk about what it's like to be them.
Yeah. So would there be an example of an exercise that you might do once you've built that trust in a group? What might be a prompt or a question that you would ask a team to dive into?
Yeah, I shamelessly stole this exercise from an organization called Challenge Day, which is in Silicon Valley. And they work with high school students, and they have great videos on their website, challengeday.org. And they work with high school students. They come in and do lots of exercises and activities. And I stole this one exercise from them. And the exercise is to complete the sentence: if you really knew me, you would know that, and then something beneath your surface, something that others wouldn't know unless they knew you really well. The videos on the Challenge Day website are, rival gang members hugging each other, and the school bully standing up and apologizing to all the people that he bullied over the years, and really dramatic results. And so I thought, I wonder, how would this go over with adults? And I do a lot of build up to it, and we don't do it at the start of the day. This is much later, towards the end of a day, or a 2-day program, whatever the case may be. And we put a lot of guardrails and guidelines around it, and then people share. And some people share things they've never shared with anyone ever in their lives. And other people share stay much closer to the surface. But we try to not judge, and we just say, listen, just whatever you're comfortable sharing. We're not making you share anything. And it's a great lead into the conversation about what authenticity actually is. Some people think authenticity is bearing your soul, when it's not. It's just being more true to who you are and sharing more appropriately what that is to others. Again, learning about yourself in self-perception, finding your voice in emotional expression or self-expression, and saying your truth. We all need to say our truth. The world needs all of our truths, and it's a waste to not speak your truth.
Yeah. I feel like we could go on for hours with all the questions I've written down here, but one of the ones that I would like to dive into is around frequency and cadence. Like, it sounds like one of your workshops really brings a team into creating this trust, creating this connection, building good foundations for relationships. How do teams continue that? Do they keep bringing you back in for workshops? Do you create sort of routines that start to sit in the weekly or monthly operating cadence?
Yeah, great question. A typical project for us is we get a group of a list of names and email addresses. We invite them by email to all take either the self-report version of the emotional quotient inventory or the multi-rater version, the EQ360. That we encourage the 360, the multi-rater version, for all executive teams that we work with. And then everybody meets with one of our coaches virtually prior to the group session, so they know and understand more about where they are in relation to the general population and in relation to a group of high-performing leaders. We have those two comparisons in the reports, and then we in the group session we start light. And we get increasingly more challenging as the workshop progresses. At the end of the workshop, we ask people to commit to doing something, and what are they going to take away? And we go around and we first of all we check in. At the end, we check out, and then we follow that up with coaching. So we are meeting with people at least a couple more times, and saying, okay, so now you've had all this opportunity to think about this stuff. What do you want to do? And then people in varying degrees are committed to making changes, to doing things differently, to being better parents, better siblings, better sons and daughters, better teammates, better colleagues at work, etc. So again, we focus on the individual and other issues. People are resourced to address other issues like psychological safety. Amy Edmondson said, many managers don't have the emotional intelligence to create psychological safety. So thank you, Amy Edmondson. And we use a lot of the contemporary models that are being trained on, and then we trace it back and say, who do you have to be as a human in order to make this work, make this happen? A lot of DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion programming, they don't resource people. So go have these difficult conversations. People are like, wow, I don't know how. I don't know where I would even begin. So
that's powerful. And have you seen any of your customers build it into like a weekly stand-up meeting or a quarterly event where they start to come back and ask some of these questions of each other and kind of keep repeating, reinforcing
yes,
those good
absolutely.
behaviors?
Every organization is different to the extent to which they're prepared to commit to something like that, but absolutely, and to varying degrees, people build something. And many organizations already rely on coaching, and so we simply pass them off to their coach that they had before or that they're getting. Some coaches have been internally screened by organizations, and so we pass them off. We've even done workshops for internal coaches to be familiar with this model that we use so that they can pick up where we leave off and continue that process of going deeper into this foundational set of skills with people.
That's a neat team up, because I am seeing more and more internal coaches and companies investing in coaching capacity within their businesses.
Absolutely.
So that's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
And a final question, with the 360, the EQ 360, are you able to longitudinally kind of assess how the team was today, how they're in 6 months' time, 12 months' time? Does that convey?
Absolutely. The risk, as you may know, is 360 burnout. We don't want to burn anybody out. But about a year, in about a year's time, that seems to not burn people out too badly. People understand the reasoning for it, and they're prepared to provide that feedback. But 360 feedback done on an interval basis is fantastic.
Neat. Okay, that's really neat. I feel like we should definitely schedule to come back and actually do a whole segment on burnout and stress management.
Absolutely. Would love it, Dane. Would love it. It'd be great.
We should plan on that.
Okay, sounds good.
We're already up on time. So it's been a wonderful conversation, David. Lots to sort of summarize here, but I love some of your sound bites around resourcing the people, around, allowing team members, individuals to nudge the business into the future as well. That's very empowering.
Yes.
I thought that was fantastic. I love the way that you shared that AI has no emotion, so we should all continue to carry hope that we're going to have key roles to play in our teams as humans. And those 5 kind of skills, self-perception, self-expression, relationships, decision-making and problem-solving, and then stress management, they're top of mind for any leader. So it's nice to know that there's a framework out there to go and do the assessment and then do the training behind it.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, if any of our guests want to find you, it's a pretty straightforward email domain, I bet. But where else do they find your work, David?
Unfortunately, EITC stands for Earned Income Tax Credit in the U.S. So we get frequently confused with that. But just type in Emotional Intelligence Training Company, and there we are.
That's awesome. Well, we'll be sure to add the links when we publish the show too. Thanks for your time today, David.
Thanks, Dane. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us. Remember that by embracing vulnerability, trusting our intuition, and approaching challenges with compassion, we not only strengthen our teams, but also pave the way for a future where collaboration thrives. If you're hungry for more insights, strategies, and research on collaboration, head over to thefutureofteamwork.com. There, you can join our mailing list to stay updated with the latest episodes and get access to exclusive content tailored to make your team thrive. Together, we can build the future of teamwork. Until next time.